we truly needed to build a Canadian version that reflects our lender landscape, our regulatory environment. For anyone that doesn't know who Tim is, he's a US-based mortgage coach who built one of the most respected programs in the American mortgage industry. And his core thesis, it's pretty simple. Like, most brokers are reactive. They typically are scrambling on every file. There's no real structure to their client experience. And his version of the perfect loan process essentially flipped that, designed every stage in advance. So knowing what you're going to say on the first client call to, know what your pre-approval conversation looks like, know how you handle the handoff to the lender, know what your post-close follow-up is. Like, every stage was very intentional. And the brokers in our network doing the most volume, the happiest clients, the best referral rates, like, they all had some version of this. Maybe not the exact perfect loan process or our version of the Canadian perfect process, but they did have a system. They had a rhythm. And like, the brokers who are struggling, they're very talented, but they're winging it every single time. And essentially our thesis became, what if we could take what the top 5% do naturally and systematize it for the other 95%?
The two biggest wow factors that I took from Tim were around consistency and how we make clients feel in the process, in the client journey. And to use Cactus Club or Starbucks as an example, no matter who the hostess is, no matter who the server is, they say the same things. They make you feel comfortable. They seat you the same way every single time. If client experience changes from client to client, it really is not a system. And that's where you're playing with fire. And I can tell you from experience, just with A Better Way over the last, a little over 3 years, brokers with a process, just from our engagement, right? From our shoes, these brokers are far calmer. They're typically not the ones with deals blowing up last minute. They're setting clear expectations with their clients up front, and they're also not wasting their time or the clients. And there's a ton of wasted time in our industry right now, given the rate environment.
Here's the thing about Tim Braheem's program. It's specifically built for the American market. What doesn't maybe translate from the US to Canada?
Yeah, a couple big ones. Compliance is a lot different. Regulation in the US is a lot different. They have a lot of different government programs that we don't have in Canada. Even just our regulatory and licensing through, BCFSA, RECA, and FSRA, speaking about A Better Way specifically, is far different from the US state system. FinTrack is a completely different beast. Incorporated brokers are reporting entity now, which is far different than the US.
Yeah, that's exactly why we couldn't just license Tim's content and hand it to our brokers. Like, we truly needed to build a Canadian version that reflects our lender landscape, our regulatory environment, like you mentioned. In the US, the transaction coordinator, the processor, to our model, the AMA, the underwriter, like, those two roles are extremely different from one another.
We had to basically take Tim's philosophy and revise it to align with Canadian compliance and the Canadian process, and just the simple setup of a brokerage in Canada versus the US.